please welcome to the stage your moderator for this session, Natalie Giaz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the session, Create a Joint Health and Safety Committee. Your people will beg to join, and not just because of the coffee. This session is sponsored by IHSC 891. My name is Natalie Diaz, and I'm Motion Picture Safety Advisor at Actsafe. Before we start the session, I would like to first acknowledge the traditional indigenous land that we all live and gather today. Although this meeting is online, we still enjoy the pleasure of living and working within an indigenous territory. To highlight the importance of this acknowledgement, I would urge you, following this session, to visit the Native Land website and search the territory on which you are located. That website is www.native-land.ca. This session is presented by Janet Sellery. She is one of the Canadian's leading experts in health and safety in the arts, entertainment, and live events. She is the board chair for Event Safety Alliance Canada and a board member for Event Safety Alliance US. She is a health and safety consultant with Sellery, Health Plus Safety, and her expertise is on customizing program, training, and resources to reflect the unique demands of live events in environment. If you have questions that you'd like to ask Janet during the question time, please write them into the Q&A section to the top right corner of your screen next to them. I will ask Janet in the appropriate time. If you see a question that you like, you can also vote, and then that will be moved to the top. We also have an interaction in an interactive poll that you can participate by scan the code that we will share on your screen or through the link that we will place in the chat in the appropriate moment as well. Without any delay, let me welcome your speaker for this session. Janet, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. And I hope everyone enjoyed Eric's session. I always enjoy hearing Eric, so it was a real treat. I'm just going to pop up my presentation. And today we're talking about joint health and safety committees. So I know that everybody, may have feelings about a health and safety committee. And I want to talk about some ways that we can make it a very productive and actually really positive experience. Before I get started, just a quick disclaimer that I'm not a lawyer, you're not clients, and it's up to the discretion of your occupational health and safety officers to determine what precautions are acceptable for the kind of work you do, and you need to comply with all relevant legal requirements. I've already had a lovely introduction from Natalie, but my background is originally as a theater stage manager, and I became involved with health and safety following the critical injury of an actor. Really sort of took my career in a very different direction. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I've found lots of wonderful opportunities to volunteer with great people in hopes of, making sure that our sector is well protected and supported through health and safety. So today's discussion about health and safety committees is going to be really focused on how to make it a positive and productive experience. I won't be spending time on legislation because there is lots of fantastic information out there for you to refer to. I urge you, for those of you who are in British Columbia, to take advantage of Actsafe's Joint Health and Safety Committee Fundamentals Training. It's really excellent. It will take you through all of the requirements that you need to follow to make your committee compliant. And WorkSafe BC also has some really excellent resources on their website, and those can be accessed through Actsafe or directly through the WorkSafe BC website. But they've got a full handbook, an evaluation tool, and a whole bunch of templates and resources. So, so that's the place to go for that type of information. And to start off, I want us to take a few minutes and think about what we want our Joint Health and Safety Committee to accomplish and how we want to accomplish it. So I just want to get a sense of your experiences with both good and bad committee meetings. For the first activity, I'm going to ask you to reflect on maybe you're not part of a Joint Health and Safety Committee, so it could be either that type of meeting or it could be another committee or community group, and just fill in a couple of words about something that you find either annoying or frustrating about, oh, that one says a great meeting. I was hoping we were going to start with the bad meeting. I guess it doesn't. Oh, there it is, like magic. So these are the things that you just have a look at. You can hop into Slido with the code hashtag JHSC and tell me a couple of words about what makes a bad meeting.
And just a note, you will need to answer both good and bad meeting questions, as we did set the great meeting up first. So you can do both, and we'll be able to see both answers.
Okay. So yes, thank you, Andrea. So you'll fill in both. So we want to hear both the good and the bad. I'm not asking for the ugly, although you can throw that in with the bad as well. And once we start seeing a few replies, then, oh, there we go. They're starting to come in. Fantastic. We have at least one person who's gotten onto Slido. Oh, good. Lack of organization. Uncontrolled. I wonder what else there is. Or maybe you guys have only attended fabulously organized, really fulfilling meetings. No clear agenda. Yep. Been there. Latecomers. That's discouraging for everyone who arrives on time, who puts the reminders in their calendar. Just going to give a little bit more time to see if we get some more responses. Biases, yes. It can be really frustrating when you go to a meeting and you have this feeling that the people running the meeting already know what they want to hear. You can enter more than one. Sure, hop on.
Not sure if it's set up to be able to enter more.
Okay, then no. If you have extras, or if you've any that, or if maybe you don't easily have access to Slido, you can pop it in the chat. I can look at both at the same time. Off topic. Yeah. Oh, so annoying. No food. Bad chair. Who would call a meeting without food? Loudest person takes over. Not learning anything new, not engaging. Poor attendance. Okay, so it sounds like most of your experiences are very similar to mine, that, sometimes you get there and the meeting's too long. There's lack of participation. Andrea, could we have a look at the good, please? Because I'm seeing in the chat we have already got a good. We've got good is people coming with curiosity, being collaborative, having direction and goals and participation. Bad is lack of support. Yes. Okay. Well, this is really helpful to get a sense of what are the kinds of things that you find annoying in a meeting. So let's go and see how we can figure out, oh, boring, facilitator not energized. Yep, those are two problems as well. Andrea, I'm going to ask to go back to my presentation, and I want to just touch on a few of the things that I've experienced, because I've been on a health and safety committee for a really long time in the past. I spent probably a bit more than 20 years on a joint health and safety committee at the Stratford Festival. Started off for about half of that time as a worker member, and then when I got into the health and safety role, I became a management member. some of the experiences that I had were, they reflect what a lot of you have come up with. Sometimes meetings were scheduled on very short notice. There was poor attendance, which someone has noted. We would have a plan at one meeting to do a certain number of workplace inspections, but when you came back to the next meeting, they wouldn't have been done. The minutes were often disorganized. Unresolved items would just drop off until someone brought them up again. We also suffered at times, and this is going back a long time, like we're talking 20 years. We had times where members of the committee who belonged to the management side had no authority to get anything done. And often we didn't get any responses to our questions. And one of our biggest challenges was that no one on the committee, for the first few years I was part of it, had any understanding of the legal requirements or the duties of the employer, supervisor, and worker. I kept thinking that if I only worked harder, the committee would be more effective. So I became the worker co-chair and did the minutes. Unfortunately, this only made me more frustrated because there was still at that time very little management support. So when we get into looking at what makes a great meeting, and I'm happy to see that we have had some good things coming out of meetings that you guys have attended. One of the very best things I liked about the Joint Health and Safety Committee was I got to meet people from other departments, and I learned a lot about their work. I developed skills and learned about health and safety, which I certainly didn't know when I started. And I really had a lot of satisfaction when we finally got to the point where we could make a positive difference on behalf of our coworkers. So that's the goal for all of us. That's what we want to accomplish. So I find whenever I'm trying to figure out how to do something better, I want to first think about the why and then move on to the how. So first of all, let's think about the why. We need to think about the purpose of a joint health and safety committee. What is it supposed to do? And so there's a really clear purpose. It's about workers and the employer working together to identify and find solutions for health and safety problems in the workplace. So that comes in different forms. It can be about promoting health and safety. It can be about consulting employers and workers. It includes recommendations to make improvements and also promoting compliance. So that's a really clear purpose. I wish that I had been as clear on the purpose when I started my time on a health and safety committee. So once the purpose is clear, then the focus has to be on the how. How do we get this done? The first thing that I would like to suggest is information, because as a prospective committee member, I want to know, what am I signing up for? And we can make sure people have a sense of what a committee does if we promote awareness of the work of the committee and encourage people to contribute ideas and be more involved. Then at that point, when we're actually seeking Joint Health and Safety Committee members, we need to provide the rules of procedure or the terms of reference. So before someone says, sure, yeah, I'll come to that meeting, they should have an understanding about how committee members are selected and who can be a member of the Joint Health and Safety Committee. What are the procedures? How often will the meetings be held? Will there be printed minutes? And they should also understand that they get paid time to fulfill their work on the Joint Health and Safety Committee. I really wish I had known that, because I spent many, many years attending a lot of meetings and doing a lot of workplace inspections and writing a lot of minutes on my own time. I never had a clue that we were supposed to be paid for it. So when I took on the health and safety role, I made sure that it was very clear that people would be submitting their time for payment when they participated. So we make sure everyone has a good understanding of what they're signing up for. And then we have to focus on roles and responsibilities. If I'm going to be part of this committee, how am I going to know what I'm supposed to do? British Columbia and some of the other provinces are very clear in their requirement to have training and education for members. And this education is going to include learning about legislation, the Workers' Compensation Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Regulation, and Occupational Health and Safety Guidelines, as well as roles and responsibilities, work refusal, workplace inspections, and incident investigations. We also need to understand that the Joint Health and Safety Committee is a part of the internal responsibility system. And this is an idea, a philosophy that underlies all of our health and safety legislation, because it means that each person does health and safety in a way that fits their authority and their responsibility. Health and safety is a shared responsibility, so we take personal responsibility, and also we need to be aware of the safety of others. Health and safety is part of every job all the time. And if you look at the image to the right, you can see how there is an interaction between the employer, the supervisor, and the worker. And on the outer ring, we have our Joint Health and Safety Committee. So we need to be clear on the difference between the roles, and we need to understand, what hat do you wear? The employer is responsible for health and safety compliance, and they're required to control hazards. The Joint Health and Safety Committee is part of the internal responsibility system. They work with the employer, but they do not do health and safety. So sometimes when I'm working with say a theater client or a venue, I'll be asking questions just to assess where they're at with their program. And I'll say, do you have a health and safety policy? If I get a reply that says, well, our Joint Health and Safety Committee were supposed to do it, but they didn't, then I know that there is a misunderstanding in terms of roles, because creating policies and procedures is the role of the employer. I always encourage employers to involve their health and safety committee, to invite them to participate, to consult them about the things that will be affecting them. But it's not up to your Joint Health and Safety Committee to go and write a health and safety manual. So they don't do health and safety. They don't order health and safety equipment. They don't, they're not responsible for organizing training. That is not the role of the committee. Their role is to make recommendations. They do not have the authority to spend money or force changes directly. So I like to kind of sum it up as a role of oversight. So they oversee the health and safety program for a company, and audit. So they will kind of be looking at the things that are supposed to be happening and checking to make sure they actually are happening. And some of that happens through workplace inspections. So we know that there are certain things that are meant to be a certain way throughout the workplace. And when those workplace inspections happen, it's an audit. Are the fire extinguishers currently inspected? Are the first aid kits filled with the right supplies? Are there any fire exits that have been blocked by dollies or boxes? That's sort of an audit function. So here's my little summary of the different roles in the workplace. We have the employer, who is responsible for developing a health and safety program and providing resources. We have a bunch of supervisors who behave as role models and participate in the implementation and enforcement of the health and safety program. And then we have a great number of workers, hopefully, who are responsible for compliance with that health and safety program, and also reporting hazards, injuries, incidents, and occupational illnesses. And finally, we have our Joint Health and Safety Committee, who provides the oversight of the program and the audit to make sure everything is on track. So someone mentioned a real frustration is about organization of committees and meetings, because I have a question about that. Are you going to waste my time? I participate on several advisory committees, working groups, 2 boards, and it does make a difference to me. If I'm at a meeting that is just completely chaotic and nothing's ever happening, that's not going to be something I want to spend my time on. So the way that we can make sure that we're going to be well organized and attract people to be part of the committee is to make sure that we are putting together an agenda to define what that meeting will include so that people can adequately prepare. And the next thing is respecting people's time. Schedule your meetings in advance. Maybe it's a standing meeting on every Thursday at 11 a.m. once a month, or maybe it's related to 2 days after you open each show. But something that's predictable and something that considers the actual schedules of the people who need to attend the meetings. Send out meeting reminders. So yes, sure, get it in their calendars, but we're all busy people. You know, I think it's respectful to send out a reminder with the agenda a few days ahead, week ahead, whatever your committee determines to be appropriate. Start on time, finish on time. And then minutes. So minutes have been something that I don't know what it is about me, and maybe there's a few of you in this group who have the same experience, but I'm often the person who people look to, and I end up taking minutes. I am very, very fortunate right now to be on a board where someone else is taking the minutes, and I appreciate that every single meeting. But they need to be accurate, and they need to indicate what are the follow-ups and next steps that should happen. Who's going to do what, and by when are they going to do it? And if you need any guidance for how to do minutes, or you want to look at some templates and resources, there is some excellent information from WorkSafe BC. Now, one of the things that I like to do when I do minutes for a joint health and safety committee is I like to number the items, and you can do this in lots of different ways. But what I settled on, because someone recommended it to me, is I assign every item we talk about a number. So if it's, I do the meeting number and then an item number. So if it's meeting number 3, item number 5, then it will hold that item as long as that issue is on the minutes until it is resolved. So then now I was working for a very large organization. So if we have 20 items on our old business, we can look at it very quickly and go, oh my goodness, like that was from 6 meetings ago and we haven't made any progress. Or, oh, that was one that just came up last month. Because things can languish, and sometimes it's important to go, listen, you know, the people in that department, they have been waiting for 4 months to have a response about this. We need to take care of that. Scope. So scope is a really critical discussion to have. And I think by really clearly creating a scope, you can make your meetings a great deal more efficient. Because sometimes you'll reach the point where you go, is everything workplace health and safety? One of the things that I found was really helpful was to establish processes for routine issues. The committee I was on, now the Stratford Festival is a very, very large organization. It has 4 theaters. It had 5 different buildings with shops and archives and warehouse and rehearsal space. And it was a very, very big organization. So if we did, and we had to do a workplace inspection of every part of every building every month, except for when we were off season. That's an Ontario requirement, not quite so onerous in BC, but we were sort of buried in minutia for a really long time. So I created just a couple of pages, a policy that I called Reporting and Resolving Health and Safety Concerns. And the first thing it did was it gave clear instructions for supervisors and workers. So if you have a concern, you need to speak to your supervisor and give them an opportunity to address the problem. So when the internal responsibility system is functioning effectively, if I have a problem with a piece of equipment, I go to my supervisor. They find a replacement, or they arrange a repair, or they put me on to different work. And then that resolves it. So that's happening internally. That doesn't need to come to the Health and Safety Committee. So we found that by training people on that, actually relieved a great deal of the stuff that was coming to the committee. Sometimes there would be a breakdown where that process wasn't working effectively for a particular issue or a particular department, and then we would speak about it at the committee level. There was a lot of routine things, though, that we really needed to get resolved in a more efficient way. Things like maintenance and housekeeping concerns. So if someone is reaching out to the Health and Safety Committee about, a floor that hasn't been mopped frequently enough, or one of the things we dealt with an awful lot was temperature and ventilation concerns. So if you have 25 people working in a wardrobe together, it's really likely that it is never going to be the right temperature for a couple of people. It'll be too hot or it'll be too cold. And that can be addressed most effectively by dealing with the facilities people, not by waiting 3 weeks, making a comment to go to the health and safety member to take to a meeting. And then 3 weeks later, you talk about how that day in March it was too cold, or that day in July when it was too hot. So you need to set up a process for dealing with those routine concerns. Replacement filters in local exhaust systems. Don't wait for someone to come around doing a health and safety workplace inspection. Have a process. Who do they go to make that request? Same thing with fire extinguishers. So you see a fire extinguisher that hasn't been inspected that month, the supervisor should be able to call the facilities department and say, hey, you know what? Obviously we might have had something in front of this. For whatever reason, this was missed. You need to come and check it. First aid supplies, running out of Band-Aids. Those kits get inspected every 3 months, but perhaps it's a busy time of year. There's quite a few boo-boos. You should have someone who you can call and just say, we need some more Band-Aids. Now, the other side of that is when I was arranging all these first aid kit inspections, I can tell by how many first aid logs I'm getting, how many Band-Aids they should be going through. So if we're getting lots of requests for Band-Aids and I'm not getting lots of first aid reports, then it's time to do a reminder and let people know that they have to document every time they use something out of a first aid kit. Not popular, but that's the very best way we have to make sure that if someone has even a minor injury in the workplace, that it will be compensable if they have a complication. And we did have a worker who had a small cut that led to blood poisoning. Fortunately, it had been documented so that when they needed to be hospitalized for a brief time, it was compensable. But otherwise, it might not be. A couple of other things that you can address are facilities work requests. So if like we used to have things come to the committee like I want a shelf in my office. Okay, that doesn't need to come to the committee. Capital requests. I want to make an office in the corner of the shop. We found, and part of it was we were a little bit victims of our own success, is that once the committee started to become effective, people began to go, oh, well, I need a shelf in my office. If I go to the Health and Safety Committee, it'll probably get done. So knowing that we were getting things done was good, but not everything is workplace health and safety. There need to be other ways to get that done. So one more thing about scope is that there are lots of issues that will arise that are important, but outside of health and safety. So all of us need to be really careful and beware of scope creep. So sometimes things that might creep into health and safety are labor relations. There may be an issue of conflict between a couple of people, and that needs to be resolved through more of a human resources process. Accessibility is typically not health and safety, although there are some aspects of it that will be. For example, having emergency procedures that account for people who may have mobility needs or other accessibility needs that would be relevant. Um, Having a conversation about whether we print programs in a larger font for people with low vision, that's outside of what we do. Environmental sustainability. So sometimes conversations will come up about um, things like whether we have bigger recycling boxes and smaller garbage cans. Important, great discussion, but not for this particular committee. Animal welfare. Like there are lots of things that come up at meetings where you just think, that's important, but it's not part of this. And this last one, I actually was at a working group meeting where at the very end of a really long meeting, someone was talking about, is there any information about ecologically friendly mindfulness surrounding site selection? And the question was about whether putting an outdoor event in a particular location was going to be disturbing to wildlife, which is, I'm not saying it's something we shouldn't be considering, but it's not part of a joint health and safety committee mandate. So we need to focus on exactly what is part of the committee mandate. And then we need to make sure that we have our co-chairs um, ready to provide guidance. So I would say it's important for the co-chairs to identify what is within the scope of that committee, recognize and redirect issues that are not related to health and safety, and channel the enthusiasm and the work of the committee towards addressing current health and safety issues. So just to sum up the discussion about scope is stay in your lane. Don't try to do things that the employer is responsible for, and don't try and do things that the employer has a right to do. So the responsibilities for the employer are very clearly laid out in legislation. And they also have a lot of things that they have the right to do, like scheduling, like planning, like deciding whether to move to a different building. We want, as a joint health and safety committee, to be consulted on issues that do affect the safety of the workers, but we need to be, understanding of where that boundary lies. And this is a super important one. I saw some people who were speaking to this in their comments. Whenever I'm involved with something, I'm really concerned about action. Are we getting anywhere? People want to be part of committees that are effective and get stuff done. This includes employer responses to recommendations. So if there is a question, we need to get information back at the next meeting. What does the employer plan to do about this? Or what steps are they taking to find out? If it's something that's more of a long-term project, we need to see regular follow-ups regarding progress. We need to feel like we're getting somewhere. And finally, we need to see completed actions. So one of the things that I did towards, in the last few years of being part of the Joint Health and Safety Committee was I did an annual report, and I would make a list of how many items did we actually speak about in our meetings over a year, how many of those were closed, and what are the ones that remain. And that sort of was part of a whole report that also included a summary of injuries and incidents as well. But it was really nice to have a snapshot and go, okay, well, there's lots still to do, but look at here are all the things that we did get done this year. And recognition. So did anybody notice the work? That was also kind of frustrating because we used to spend hours and hours in meetings, and I would spend hours and hours writing these 10-page minutes. Did anyone notice? I think it's really important, certainly on the employer side, to appreciate the committee member contributions. And there are some very, very simple and free things that you can do. You can call someone out at a meeting. You can, if someone had come by my office and said, hey, Janet, I was at a trade show and I spotted this kind of earplugs that I thought might be really great. Then if we're talking about that at a meeting, I can say, hey, this person spotted this and we're going to get some to try out. Give them some credit. When you're talking to their coworkers, I like to say, oh yeah, so-and-so's your health and safety committee member representing your department. And, they're doing a really great job representing you at these meetings. And never underestimate the value in sending a note to someone's manager. Just sending an email and saying, so-and-so came up with this really great idea. It's a terrific solution. I think spreading the credit for ideas is it's one of the best things that you can do for each other. I also like to encourage what I call the grand fromage involvement. So whoever is the big cheese in your organization, whether it's an executive director or a general manager, invite them to participate in a workplace inspection. Ask them to attend a joint health and safety committee meeting and update the committee on progress of a particular issue or provide feedback. It was really meaningful for our committee when our executive director went on, he went on a workplace inspection for parts of one of the buildings, and he was really surprised at all of the things that people were looking at and checking. And he said that when he came to the following meeting, and he said some genuine positive things about the work that the committee was doing, and that kind of energizes you to keep at it. So I encourage you to have a look at that evaluation tool from WorkSafe BC. It's a really, really great way to figure out what the strengths of your committee are, and if there's some gaps, to give you some ideas as to how to improve. And perks. Don't underestimate the power of small perks. So someone did say, make a note about coffee. I'm all for that. I know that not every company can afford to lay on a little buffet like you see in the picture, but even having some coffee and tea or some cold drinks, box of donuts, maybe not even every time, but sometimes. I used to gather swag up at health and safety conferences, and then we would have everyone put their name in a hat and we would draw it out and you could pick something. We also had a situation where when I first started, I had to go through all the buildings and figure out what all the first aid kits were. And in a lot of cases, they had purchased like little tiny ones that didn't comply with the requirement for a workplace kit. So once I finally got the replacement ones ready, I took all of those old ones that were like, they were fine, but they were inadequate for the purpose. I cleaned them all and I put very basic, antiseptic wipes, Band-Aids, and I made these little kits be something that we could give out to committee members to keep in their car, keep in their home, keep in their backpack. And it doesn't take a lot, but a few little things can be quite rewarding. So I'm gonna. Oh, I see that everyone's gone on to the snacks. So yes, if I could provide you with snacks today, what would you prefer? So we're seeing quite a very high majority of people who are very interested in the fruit tray. So if you're not already there, please hop in and tell us what you like. Is it the fruit tray? Is it pizza? I thought there might be people, it depends time of day, croissants maybe. Candy buffet is often a nice choice.
And again, this is a single choice vote.
Single choice, yes. So you are committing to, if you really want the corn dogs, you can't have them and the donuts. You're going to have to choose between the fruit tray and the deep fried Mars bars, unfortunately. All right. Do we have anything in the, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So we have a few, we seem to have more people who are keen on the fruit tray. So let's take that down and see if there's any questions in the chat. And I'm just gonna, while we're waiting to see if any questions come up, I just want to make a couple more notes just on my own experience. Some companies do have a lot of trouble getting people to join their health and safety committee, but I really encourage you to try and seek out varied perspectives and experience and expertise. And I encourage people to try and engage both the keeners. So keeners are great. If you have someone who really wants to be part of the committee and they're prepared, yes, please come on in. But also, you will have a squeaky wheel. Every organization will have one. And sometimes that can be really frustrating because sometimes they might tangent or they might be asking for something entirely unreasonable. But we want those extremes of people as part of our committee, because if you have someone who's really fighting back against the health and safety program, if you can involve them, you can turn that around and they will be incredibly strong advocates. So Natalie, do we have a question coming in?
We have one question, like a comment as well. Like, what do you think about the recognition of the member and on behalf of the employees, like certificates, right? Something like that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that any kind of recognition is a great idea. And I think that should be really personalized to your organization. So get to know your people and what they like. So sometimes, putting the names up on the health and safety board is enough. Maybe you want to do, if you have an employee newsletter, you might want to put a profile up. You can certainly certificates, badges. On some construction projects, they will have a special sticker that goes on a hard hat, a small one, not a big one. You can have a little tiny one that will not interfere with the inspection of the hard hat. But yeah, I think generally just appreciating people's contribution can make a really big difference.
And how about the organization of the other employees? They make how you can the committee can recognize other employees that is not in the committee.
Absolutely. And there's lots of different things that you can do with that. So you could have health and safety idea of the month, or you could have, if you have an awards program, even just sort of a fun one, you could have something related to safety, certainly. And I'm seeing a question about committee and COVID issues.
Yes.
Yeah, so absolutely. COVID is an occupational health and safety issue, and the committee needs to be involved in that planning. Now, there will be need to be collaboration, because our health and safety committees are focused on the workplace. So they're focused on the people who work there rather than patrons and customers. But with something like COVID, there is no separating that out. You do need to take care of your people who work there in order to adequately care for your patrons. So that really does need to be a collaboration. I think we've seen during the time of COVID, we've seen some really good progress on, it's been a terrible, frustrating time, but people have sort of started putting health and safety front and center, and they have been including people, they have been including people that are, like suddenly you need to have someone from front of house because you're dealing with patrons. So I think we've seen, now everyone knows what PPE is and the hierarchy of controls and Swiss cheese. So that's cool.
Exactly. I have another comment here. The
Okay.
visuals are great, right? We like
Mhm.
to put places something that is visual and is helpful, right? Especially the ones that is clearly defines rules of the committee members. Could
Sure.
something like that be posted on the Joint Health and Safety Committee board or the safety board? We
Yeah.
know has a safety board.
100%. So I've given a PDF of this presentation to Actsafe, and I trust they'll share it afterwards. And, you know, if there's an image in there that you want to use for your board, it's, you know, and you might even have someone on your committee who you say, or you have, I don't know, you give a chocolate bar to whoever brings a great image to your meeting that you can put on your board and try and keep the content current, but also keep the content relevant. So there's tons of great materials through Actsafe that actually reflect our sector. And so you can go onto their website and find stuff that you could print out and post. But sure, if that's an image that resonates with you, certainly it's you know, you're welcome to use it. I've spent so many months and years trying to figure out how do I make this make sense for me, and I'm more than happy to have that shared with other people.
Yeah, one other thing that is always I receive on my classes, usually it is about communication, right? Give them feedback for the employee that give you a suggestions. That will be the trust. How do you think is the most effective way to communicate? It is on safety board? It is one-on-one? What do you have seen that?
I'm a fan of posted information because I think it's great that people can, you know, have a look at the board whenever they like. I had a very fortunate, my office when I was at the Stratford Festival, it was quite tiny, but it was in a perfect location. It didn't have a window to outside, but it did have a window across the hall to the photocopy room. And it was on the way to the green room. So I had my door open most of the time, and people would just sort of pop in and say hello while they were photocopying something. So if you're photocopying scripts, they could pop in and say hi, or people on their way to or from the green room for coffee. And I find that we have some really great conversations when it's casual, and that's why I would try and get out to. I would do as many workplace inspections as I could, not because I was looking for content for meetings, but because I wanted to be, and we all of us who are interested in safety want to be that person that people feel comfortable with, so that they can come to me. And or, you know, ideally this is going to be with all of your folks on a committee, that they can feel respected, that they can feel that the question they are asking is important, and that they're going to get a reply. So I think it kind of depends on the culture of your organization. So do people get information best through emails, or do you have an internal website, or is it things that you post on a board in the green room? I'm a big fan of putting health and safety into every meeting to some degree. You know, if you have a production meeting, there should always be a conversation about health and safety. If there's a board meeting, there should be a report. So the ways that you can sneak it in there so that it's always an idea that's relevant. We don't separate it from what we're doing to put shows on. It's part of it.
Exactly.
So as a note, I've dropped the PDF of Janet's presentation into the chat. You can click on it and it should download directly.
Oh, fantastic. That was efficient. Has anyone had any experiences with the Health and Safety Committee that have been absolutely phenomenally fantastic? Because I'd love to. We can even invite you to speak out loud if you would like that. You can just put a little note in the chat, because we'd love to hear about that. And maybe, Natalie, have you been involved with any, can you think of like the best Joint Health and Safety Committee meeting ever?
Well, I came from different industry, right? I came from manufacturing, and the management is great, always great. But like I said about communication, the best way that I really appreciate the committee go outside and go in the floor, operational floor, and they give the feedback to them, right? I think that's the best way to build the trust, and they can seek for you if they have some questions, right? If they give some suggestions, organization, right? I think that is the most important thing, in my opinion. I know our industry is a little bit different. Every industry is different, right? And we need to adapt with the particularity of that industry.
And I like what you said about going onto the floor and talking to people. Another one of my favorite things to do is when I'm walking through a venue or shops or offices or whatever. Of course, we're watching for things that could be unsafe, but I'm also watching for things that are really great. So when one of the places I teach is for a college program, and it's in a craft and design program. So when I went into their ceramic studio, the technologist for this studio had this whole piece of the wall that was his health and safety wall, and it had face shield. It had all the PPE hanging on the wall, and it had the MSDS sheets, and it had packages of gloves. It even had a little hook that had hair elastics on, so people would tie their hair back before they were using a pottery wheel. And it was just so beautifully organized that I said, can I take a picture of that? Would you be okay with it using in, can I put this in one of my presentations? And so that was probably 5 years ago. And I still teach a WMIS course for that program. And I always say, okay, can anyone tell me where this picture was taken? And all the students know his name. And I think once a year, he has people coming back to him saying, hey, this is really impressive. You're in the presentation.
Yeah.
So, catch people doing great things. I think that we can use that in all kinds of parts of our lives.
That's true. We don't have any other comments here, but I would like to understand or see your perspective, or if you had any experience with refusal of unsafe work process.
I can tell you that with I have never had a work refusal that has gone to a second stage. In Ontario, you have to do an internal investigation of a work refusal first. And then if you can't resolve it at that point, you have to call, in our case, the Ontario Ministry of Labor. I have never experienced something that couldn't be resolved. It's really important to understand work refusal, but I also consider it as being really very much a last resort. If we're effective, no one should ever feel they have to refuse work. They can raise a concern. It will be investigated. They will be listened to, and a solution will be found. That's sort of my feeling on that one. And it looks like we might have
one more.
I'm
assuming the meeting are not done virtually anymore, since you mentioned coffee and fruit plates. But it is possible to virtually if we cannot attend in person. I think that will depend on the workplace, right?
Yeah, I think from now on, depending on the workplace, I think that we may be looking at more hybrid meetings, which would be a good thing because I know how hard it is to schedule. So if you think about, we have a 45-minute meeting and people are in different sites, it does interfere with the snacks and coffee, but I do think that we can be more efficient if we, to some degree, hang on to the remote part. But, then there's also the drone fleet, like for today, everyone who answered that question, Don Parman will be launching the drone fleet to deliver all your snacks. So, just watch for that little drone with a fruit plate hanging off it, and it'll be at your door soon.
Yeah. That is awesome. I don't have anything else.
All right. I'm just going to flip to my last slide that has contact information. At least I'm going to try. I'm always happy to hear from people, and you're welcome to reach out. I know how well supported all of you in British Columbia are through Actsafe. It's a fantastic organization, and even though I'm in Ontario, I have been involved with Actsafe since it was SHAPE, so really long time. I'm also chair of the board for the Event Safety Alliance Canada, and we will be doing our own conference coming up in May, and we are planning to do hybrid. So hopefully there will be some people who would like to join in for some additional health and safety fun and games.
That will be awesome. Thank you so much. And then we will end this session. Was a fantastic to hear you and your experiences. And thank you so much, Janet. Now it's time for lunch and stretch break, sponsored by Stage Fab. Enjoy your break, and we will see you at 1 p.m. for our next session.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.